Good morning, beautiful goddesses, and welcome to another episode of Soul Sister Adventures with my bestie, Miss Connie Houlihan. Woot woot. The
We're
question,
on
go ahead.
we're on 21.
One team, one.
Does that mean we're legal?
We are legal. And the question we have for you today is, do you hear what I hear? Do you hear what I hear?
Right?
Well, I'm excited about this conversation, Connie, because I am such an audio person, right? Like I learn through, I actually close my eyes often through the day so I can hear more clearly. So I know you're gonna read some wisdom to us, and we're gonna have a juicy conversation in the mix.
Yeah. So we've been talking from the book T. Harv Eker's Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. So if you're interested in elevating your thoughts such that you create more abundance in your life, this conversation might be for you.
Yes, please.
And today we're going to talk about, so I just want to review a little, one of the concepts that we talked about last episode. So if you haven't listened to it, you want to go back, there's great nuggets in there, is this foundational principle of, to create anything, first it's our thoughts. And our be mindful of our thoughts. Our thoughts create our feelings. Our feelings then supercharge and inspire our actions.
Or not.
So no action is an action. Inaction is an action. And those actions then, of course, produce our results. And we live in such a world of action, result, action, result, action, result.
Right.
We often don't slow ourselves down enough to see, well, what preceded the action? Well, those would be your thoughts and your feelings. So if you really want to get curious about the results that you have produced and want to produce, I would recommend, let's get interested in what are the thoughts and the feelings that led up to that. So we're going to be talking about we're going to start with this, a primary way that we're conditioned by our unconscious mind to what has led to our results with money. And if you got money handled, then apply this to another area of your life that is not working as well as you want it to, right? I know we're both, working on elevating all of the things, and money, it makes it a lot more convenient to elevate some of the other things that we have, right?
This is true.
Yeah. So our verbal programming is where we're going to start. And it's, what did you hear when you were young? So we know birth to 7, where basically our brains are in initially 0 to 2 is about delta brainwaves, and then it goes into theta brainwaves until about 7. And so it's like you're in a hypnotic state, you're just taking everything in, right? So here's my question. What did you hear about money, wealth, and rich people when you were growing up? Did you hear any phrases like money is the root of all evil? Save your money for a rainy day. Rich people are greedy. Rich people are criminals. Filthy rich. You have to work hard to make money. Money doesn't grow on trees. You can't be rich and spiritual. Money doesn't buy happiness. Money talks. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. That's not for people like us. Not everyone can be rich. There's never enough. And the infamous, we can't afford it. And I will say, I was very blessed to be raised with conscious parents. My dad used to tell me it's only money, they print it every day, which it can be good and not so good sometimes, right?
Well,
I'm just saying from personal experience. And I will say, raising Nicholas, I was very conscious not to tell him, like when he wanted something, instead of me saying, I can't afford it, I would say it's not a priority now. I never wanted to pass along imprinting to him that had him buy into the negative thoughts about money. I'm going to tell you, that kid could manifest things. He didn't have that. There was a limit to anything, right?
Yeah.
So as a parent, especially if you're parenting or having influence over a little one that's birth to 7, you might want to pay more attention to the verbal messages that you're giving, so all the statements you heard about money when you were young remain in your unconscious mind as a part of the blueprint that is running your financial life.
I love this conversation, right? So ladies, go back to, slow your breath down. First and foremost, I'm speaking to myself. Take a deep breath, get present to your childhood, and begin to be on an inquiry. What were the things that I heard growing up as a child? And they may or may not even really be present to you, like, because you actually thought they were like automatic or real. It's like the water that you were swimming around in, right? But just remember, what are the things you hear growing up, and get present to that and start to write them down, because when we create the awareness of them, then we can actually begin to do something about it. I would assume that's where we're going next, right, Miss Connie?
We are.
Beautiful.
So I have an example in the book. It talks, I'm not going to read the story. I just want to give you the overall thing. Yeah. So it's an entrepreneur that he would make large sums of money, and then he would inevitably lose it. And so he would do it again, and he would lose everything, and he'd build it up again. And he realized that his mother was always giving him messages growing up that wealthy people were greedy. Wow. And so he loved his mother more than, right, of course, his love to be wealthy.
Yes.
So he didn't want to be bad. So his unconscious mind told him he couldn't be rich. And it wasn't until he became aware, like you talked about, awareness is the first step.
Right.
That because he didn't want to choose between the love of his mom and the love of his mother and approval of his mother. So here's the deal. Here's another wealth principle. When the subconscious mind must choose between deeply rooted emotions and logic, emotions will almost always win. So this is why it's so important to start to remember and think about, what are those automatic sayings that come to mind? Because we didn't even question them. They just went straight on into the unconscious mind.
Yeah. And I do want to underscore something for our listeners. Like, we are not not saying anything about our parents, right? Our parents
absolutely
the best that they can with the tools that they have. Right. And I assert, if you were tuning in and listening to this podcast, you were out to not only break generational chains of poverty mindset. You are hungry for elevating your life, your frequency. And I'm just going to assert, I'm going to make an assumption, right? I may or may not be the truth. Try it on for yourself. I'm going to assert, potentially, your parents didn't do that. So you were on a different path of trajectory, separate and distinct from the way that your parents did it. It does not mean that what your parents did was right or wrong. I know Connie and I both grew up completely different. One does not better than the other or different than the other, or, here we are together co-creating.
Right.
How beautiful is that? And the other thing, in case you have not read, what is that book called? Many Lives, Many Masters. You chose your parents for such a time as this, so you can come to this planet to have an experience. So if there's anyone that you would like to blame, you can blame yourself.
It's so true. It is so true.
Throw that one in. That's your bonus. That's your bonus for the day. Because I know that this could be heard in a variety of ways. And our commitment is really just to awaken, to elevate, to expand, get present to what did you hear growing up, such that you can get present to what you heard when you grow up. And then at this point, you get to choose what are new ways of being, new thought patterns that you actually want to create.
I'm so glad you put that in. One of the things I tell my clients often is, especially when you're looking at the origins of where, some of the stuff came from, to do that with blameless discernment.
Yes.
With curiosity.
Yeah.
So you just, out of the, I call this one of our sage powers, or the wise part of ourselves is curious, along with blameless discernment. We're not here to make a villain out of yourself or your family members or whoever you got the messaging, the imprinting from.
Yeah.
So it's really, so bring curiosity and blameless discernment to the conversation.
And love. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
And love.
yeah.
And love.
Like, oh, thank you so much, Mom. Thank you so much, Dad. And now
Well,
I get to choose
right.
what I want to do. What do
That's
I want to
exactly
create?
right. Now what? Yeah.
Now what?
So you already alluded to, it says there are 4 key elements of change, each of which is essential in reprogramming your financial blueprint. They are simple but profoundly powerful. The first element of
Hold
change is
on.
awareness.
Get out a pen and a piece of paper because there might be some writer downers here. So the
Yeah.
four key elements
Are the first element of change is awareness.
Mm.
You can't change something unless you know it exists.
Boom.
Right? No more flying blind.
Yeah. Fish actually don't know that they're swimming in the water until
Exactly.
you take them out.
Yeah. Then you learn real quick.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the second element of change is understanding. By understanding where your way of thinking originates, you can recognize that it has to come from outside of you.
That's right. So that's just bringing the conscious awareness of the modeling that you received from age 0 to 7.
Yep.
No problem here. Just that's what's so.
Exactly. The third element of change is disassociation. Once you realize this way of thinking isn't you, right? You just had it as part of your unconscious mind, but it isn't you. Once you realize this way of thinking isn't you, you can separate yourself from it and choose in the present whether to keep it or let it go.
Right. So that's like actually viewing your life like it is a movie, like you are a caricature in a story playing out a particular theme.
Exactly.
Do you like the way the movie's going, or would you like to change your channel?
Exactly. Exactly. So, based on who you are today and where you want to be, you got to just observe this way of thinking, see it for what it is. It's a file of information that was stored in your mind a long, long time ago and may not hold any truth or value for you anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
It's just a brain pattern. You hear me say a lot. Everything's a brain pattern and or a frequency. Well, everything is a frequency, and it's brain patterns. I heard this morning on something I was listening to, we don't necessarily have a thinking problem. We have a habit problem. And our habits are formed, right, over time. And it's that way of thinking over. So it's not enough to like have a new thought today and then you think it's going to shift something. It's day after day after day reinforcing the new thoughts. So the fourth element of change is reconditioning. So we're going to introduce that in the second part of the book. So just know that is coming. So really, so I was a teacher for 25 years and I can't help it. I give out homework all the time, right?
Yeah.
So and you can take this on or not take this on, depending on how committed you are to creating your new financial blueprint. So it starts with writing down the statements that you heard about money, wealth, rich people, etc. Some of the ones I shared earlier when you were young. And then the second step is that's the awareness. Understanding is write down how you believe these statements have affected your financial life so far. Yeah. Like I said, my dad said to me, it's only money they print it every day. So on one hand, I always knew there was an abundance of money, which is good. And the ways it didn't serve me is when I was younger, especially in making business decisions, I was not as grounded in what the return on my investment would be because I just had, there was unlimited resources, which there are, and there's still some smart business practices to use, like calculating your return on your investment of time and money, right?
Agreed.
So there's this balance. And again, I don't blame my dad for that. That's just what it was. And I could appreciate the gift that it was. And then I could also see, well, how that didn't serve me and how I could use it now to serve me now, right? With love, nothing but love. So then once you've written down, those statements that you heard and what you believe, how they've affected your financial blueprint, then can you see that these thoughts represent only what you learned? They're not a part of your anatomy. So he says it's not a part of your anatomy. Well, it's a brain pattern. So it actually is. And it's not who you are. It's your brain patterns are your brain patterns. They're not necessarily who you are and your commitments. So can you see that you have a choice in the present moment to be different?
Yeah. Well, I would actually challenge that a little further. And, as you begin to write down, how did those things that you heard affect your life? After you get them all written down, go one by one and go like, actually, is this true? Is this true? Is this true? Is this true? And I think what you're going to actually begin to experience is we made it all up, good, bad, or indifferent. And I'm going to assert you're going to have more bad things down than good. And so here's the beauty. Here's the booby prize. If you made all that up, you can make up anything.
Exactly. What do you want to make up?
What
right?
do you want to make up? And then go begin to create that.
Well, and like we talked about, I think it was last week or the week before, regarding rich people think differently than middle class people think and poor people think. I think it was last week. We talked about that.
Yeah.
And so, who are the wealthy people in your world, like that you can model from, that is thinking the thoughts that you want to think, to have the feelings and the actions and the results, right?
Bingo.
Yeah. And so we talked also about
up to them.
right. Exactly. Like get in their world. And then, we talked last week about anchoring it in. So when we say these things like what I heard about money isn't necessarily true, I choose to adopt new ways of thinking that support my happiness and success. So that's the declaration this week. What I heard about money isn't necessarily true. I choose to adopt new ways of thinking that support my happiness and success. I have a millionaire mind. So
excellent.
There's some homework. If you want to alter your financial blueprint.
Yes. Yeah. And I would assert, if you're listening to this, you are up to elevating every area of your life.
Exactly.
And, just bringing it back to so often, the conversation is like, for what purpose, right? For what purpose am I actually wanting the money? I remember back in the beginning, like money didn't even enter my realm, didn't enter the conversation. It is the experiences or the freedoms that did. So what began is the things that it is that you want. Awesome. Well, this has been a juicy, juicy conversation. Ladies, what do you hear what I hear? You might begin to notice and experience the things that you've heard, the way it's transformed your life is not what everyone else has heard or even what you've heard here, right? So begin to get curious, do the work, like it, tag it, post it, share it, and we'll see you on the next video.
Get in the car.
Get in the car.